Yeah, it's better. It's better.
Okay.
Great.
This meeting is being recorded.
Perfect. So thank you, Henry, Vedabhyas, Mansi for coming in. And of course, Professor Jain can't join us, as Vedabhyas just told us. She's not feeling too well. So, but Henry, what we'll do is let's just start with as much of a introduction of yourself you want to give. It doesn't have to be brief. You can take your time, and also you can tell us about the book that you've written, and that let's just start with that. Yes, Henry.
Well, thank you. Namaste, everyone. Good morning, good evening, depending on where the folks are joining us from. My name is Henry Yampolsky, and I'm a mediator, author, and speaker. Currently, I am based in Virginia. I work at Virginia Tech, hence my wonderful background. But I've lived in all different places, lived and worked in all different places around the world, and have a very, very deep and special connection with India, having been to India 14 times. And in fact, it was my many journeys to India and the very, very profound teachings from India that has been so integral to my growth that in many ways are the basis for my book called Dissolving Conflict from Within, an Inner Path for Conflict Transformation. This book will be released globally on May 16th, 2022. I'm very, very excited, very honored to be part of this conversation with my colleagues, wonderful friends, folks that I really, really admire. And that is you, Vikram, Vedabhyas, and of course, Mansi. And it really is an honor for me to be a part of this conversation.
But Henry, when we are discussing the book on 18th of May.
Yes, yes, that's right. I'm very much looking forward to it. That's going to be just a few days after the release. So hopefully by that time I'll read the book and I'll be able to tell you what it's about.
Yes, and I will definitely not read the book because that's the whole idea behind that.
Yeah,
because some of us don't read them. So talking books. So Vedabhyas, you want to just, you don't need an introduction because look, Vedabhyas is like all over the world. He's like, I've been telling a little bit, we have to go to the villages of India also know that he's all over the world now. Yes, Vedabhyas, please.
Thank you, Vikram. It is really an honor to be having this session with you and my friends, also Henry and Mansi. And in fact, it is a very important, we have been talking to you for quite some time on this Gandhian approach to mediation. So it is such a wonderful time to discuss it further, to brainstorm on that. I am Vedabhyas and I work with Gandhi Smriti and Darshan Samiti, and I do some bit of research here and there, trying to have some workshops on different dimensions of Gandhian philosophy, like nonviolent communication, nonviolent conflict resolution, volunteering for constructive work, so on and so forth. And essentially, I'm a communicator by profession, and my area of interest has been media literacy, media and information literacy, and I've written quite a bit of stuff on that. So I really look forward for this interesting, insightful journey today with all of you. And let us try to brainstorm on this Gandhian model of humanistic mediation. Thank you very much.
Perfect. But Henry, let me tell you that they has organized a very nice session with some people, some teachers from a rural part of India, from in Bihar, Champaran. It was a very nice session we had. So, and we got into the basics about differentiating mediation and the panchayat and all those people who are already doing it out there to get them into the fold. So it was a great session. So thank you, Vedabhyas, for organizing that.
I really look forward to have more such session, and now that COVID situation is getting much better, I hope that we will take you, Vikram, to Champaran and to that village where Mr. Dipender told us about. Ever since independence, not a single court case has been recorded in that village. So I think we should all travel to that village and do a physical, proper, be there actually to understand how that whole thing happens.
No, I think that's going to be something which is important. I think dispute-free villages, if we can create that, what better from grassroots level onwards. Yeah. No, you're doing great work with this. Great. So, Mansi, please, you want to introduce yourself? And
no, sir.
Though I'm a lawyer and mediator by profession, but I have interests in good number of fields. So I am a YouTuber as well, and also I am teaching in the university here in Punjab University. So I teach law as well as I teach them Gandhian thought here in Punjab. So I have been spreading legal awareness through the legal cells, which are there in many colleges here, and I'm sure there are many such legal cells in the in the entire country. So there I teach them about the laws which every citizen should know. And being a citizen, it is important that you understand the law of the country, the law of the land. So that is why I have been spreading awareness on law and Gandhian thought as well. Also, I am a literature enthusiast, so I love writing. And apart from that, I with my mother, I share some artistic interests, so I do paint once in a while. So that is why I'm just jack of all the trades, master of none as of
Let's
now.
not
And
say
also
jack
I'm
of all
pursuing
trades.
my PhD.
Yeah, let's say multifaceted person. Let's say that. I say that's a nice thing. But the only thing is, this is interesting. Now, in my on my LinkedIn profile, I'm going to write YouTuber also. That's a good thing to have.
So you
YouTuber,
must do that
YouTuber, right?
because
Good.
it is a must, much sought after profession these days. So being a YouTuber is very, it's in fashion, in
Yeah.
vogue.
But the thing is that we'll become YouTubers, but the only influencer we'll have is Vedabhyas. He's the influencer.
True, sir. True, sir. So couldn't agree more.
See, unlike all of you, I'm not YouTuber. I'm a Googler. I just Google things.
Look, you don't need. You're an author. Look, authors are we can't write, so we have to do YouTubing.
Well, certainly Mansi can write.
Yeah, she can. Yeah.
Absolutely, yes. In
And
fact, I and Mansi are also working in another book that is on the jurisprudence of nonviolence with our director.
Okay, but what I'm going to do is I'm going to take 2 minutes. I'll just go through. I normally what I do is what is happening in February. I just do a little quick thing on that. So just give me 1 minute to 2 minutes to do that. So this is basically what's happening in February. What has already happened is this conversation. Beautiful. I don't know whether Henry you follow what I do, but this is just a conversation with those with a mediator mindset. So just all these wonderful people in the world. Let's just conversations. It can go anywhere. I mean, they're not structured in that sense. This is spontaneous. So we have that.
I follow it religiously, I can say.
Yeah.
Yes.
So this was a lecture. It was an interesting lecture. Poetry and mediation. So that was quite nice. And then come on. It's a little slow. Yeah, so this is I put out this vision 2026 evolution of mediators and mediation. So it's just now just putting our thoughts together on each topic. So this one was on heart, soul, and spirituality. Gabriela, I mean Brazil itself, and Gabriela worked on this constellation methodology, and she's saying that it's used in the Brazilian courts also. So she's taken us through some part of it this time, and we're doing it again in March. I'm trying to figure this out. Sounds really interesting. So that was, I mean, if you get time, please, it should be seen. Then Constantia was also, and this, with her, the thing is that she says in my lifetime, I should be able to practice as a full-time mediator. So this is my target. Constantia is my target, that if she can practice as a full-time mediator, I have done something there. That's how I always say. This one, some of these people you'll recognize, some you might not. So
in fact, Vikram, I have been pushing, I've been rather motivating Mansi that she should become a full-time mediator. She should become mediation should be her goal. And she wants to be a judicial officer. So I've been telling you must become a mediator and not a judicial officer. That is something more important. I don't know whether I've been able to motivate her or not, but I keep telling her instead of judicial officer, you should become a mediator.
Yeah. I think we need lots of people out there, and there's so much work to be done that for some reason, I mean, of course, it hasn't taken off the way it should have. But this is another series called Mediator Experiences. This is right now with Einstein Jams International Fellows. So this was just mediators, just that memorable experiences in the mediation world. So that, and then Isaac Ghana. What else is happening? Again, part of that, mediation visionaries give their thought on what mediation, where is going, challenges and everything. And then Bernie Meyer has written this book. Should be, I mean, interesting his thoughts on that. And then Danny Weinstein was there in last month. We are just continuing the journey with him. And then the last day of the month, every month, celebrating the birthdays of mediators. So this, I have to do this because I'm telling you, I keep telling people that these social media, these posts are not really shown to everyone. They have their algorithm and everything. So I keep telling people, please subscribe to my channel. At least you'll get a notification if you subscribe to the notifications. So perfect. So that's my job done on that. So now we're talking about mediation and Mahatma Gandhi. So for that, I tell you what I've been talking about, the definition of mediation. Up till now, there wasn't much. I mean, there was no such definition out there. But today we had the Singapore Convention being signed, and 55 countries actually signing it. So at least we have some kind of a in principle agreement. Let's just call it an agreement on the definition. It has been ratified by too many. Only 9 have ratified it, but at least we have a definition out there. So let me just take you through that definition, if that's okay, and then we talk about mediation from that perspective.
Yes,
so this
and
is
also my request yesterday, as I told you, Vikram, we had a meeting, Mansi and Henry, and my request would be to, if you kindly start with me so that I can share my point before I am able to. I will get permission from all three of you to leave for the.
No, you can leave a little. Your next show is at 9:30, so we can keep you.
I will need to have my dinner, my dear friend. Before
Winner,
that, if you
where?
want till 11:30 in the night.
There's where dinner for you and all. You have to larger good in this world. You have to do. What is this dinner and all? Come on, Gandhi ji also did the fasting for a long time. You please do some
Go
fasting.
until 11:30 in the night.
Okay, so this is what the definition says, and I'm taking this because I like the broad nature of this definition. So as a process, irrespective of the expression used or the basis upon which the process is carried out. So whatever the name it might be, whatever way you do it, all this facilitative, evaluative, transformative, narrative, let's just take that out of the picture. Let's get the names out of it, conciliation, mediation, whatever. But whereby parties have to reach an amicable settlement of the dispute with the assistance of a third person or persons, important, lacking the authority to impose a solution upon the parties. So let's just take it from this. So Henry is okay with their starts. Are you okay with that?
Sure.
Because he's really done. You people have actually have discussed it, as I was told. So, but Vedabhyas, please.
Okay. Thanks, Vikram. Thanks to Henry and Mansi. I will give you the small little background how we all three of us got into this whole thing. Actually, if you see, no one really has worked on this whole idea of the Gandhian approach to mediation. Actually, there is no such model or no such research essentially that has been done on the subject. What happened was, I believe, just before the 2nd October last year, I do this training program for the Delhi Judicial Academy. So the director of the Delhi Judicial Academy called and he said that I want you to have a session on the Gandhian model of mediation. I said, Gandhian model of mediation? He said, no, you have to do, because we have to do this program as part of Azadi Ka Amrit Mahotsav. That is, we are celebrating, mark the 75th anniversary of Mahatma Gandhi. So then I shared with Henry and then shared with Mansi, because we are all working together. So then I and Mansi put together certain things and shared with Henry. And then when he got back to us, it was completely different from what we had thought of. And that actually started the whole process. Henry gave us the guiding light. We should not look at mediation from those traditionalist or traditional models of mediation or the contemporary approaches that are there in the whole approach of mediation. He felt that we must genuinely look from the Gandhian humanistic point of view. And that's how we started our journey. And in fact, this whole conversation is part of that. We are still in the process of putting the whole thing together and hope that not just we will get it ourselves published, but also we are looking forward to actually bring together a full-fledged book on this whole issue. Well, when we are talking of the Gandhian model of humanistic mediation, basically we have to understand that the principles of humanism and moral ethics are essentially the pillars, important pillars of Gandhian philosophy. And essentially also we must look at this also includes Mahatma Gandhi's intrinsic faith on the values of truth and non-violence, how he looks at truth, how he looks at non-violence. Also, in fact, when we are talking of the Gandhian approach to humanism, actually it is an important way how it reorients our understanding, reorients our vision and ideas, reorients the whole humankind from the standpoint of truth and non-violence. One important aspect when we are talking of the Gandhian humanism, because when we are going to talk on the Gandhian model of humanistic mediation, we must enlist all the important points on the approaches of Gandhian humanism. That is something very, very important. So I will cover, in fact, essentially this Gandhian humanism. And then our friend Henry will look at it from the mediation perspective point of view. And then Mansi will try to bring together the whole two approaches on how it can be as a model. She will construct using some of the historical, she has done narrative analysis of some of the historical work done of action of Mahatma Gandhi, which led to a successful process of mediation. So we are trying to put this together in these three strands. So for Gandhi's, when we are talking again of Gandhian humanism, it is essentially the purity of mind. And by exercising love and strong commitment to the principles of non-violence, it does not compromise on any unethical or evil practices. So also when we are saying that it is not just a philosophical undertone, you see, if you look at the history, each and every action of Mahatma Gandhi was actually underlined these. And if you read his autobiography, we read autobiographies of great leaders. You see why the Gandhi's autobiography is so different in a sense, is that it is, of course, written in a very, very simple language, but also essentially it is a book of confessions. Like he is confessing if he has done something wrong, if he has done something, there is a mistake, he's confessing. He is not afraid of self-confession. And this book of the autobiography of Mahatma Gandhi highlights that. Also, the other important aspect of Gandhi's humanism is the essence of self-restraint. Self-restraint, and also he's talking of the force of love. If you read the Hind Swaraj, his seminal book, you see, he writes in his Hind Swaraj that the force of love is the same as the force of the soul of truth. In fact, you see Henry's book, Dissolving Conflicts from Within, he's talking about some of these ideas. And in fact, we take a lot from Henry's book, which he will elucidate in his talk on the essence of, the soul, the essence of inner understanding, the tuning from inside. So Gandhi in Hind Swaraj further says that we have evidence of its working, that is the working of love at every step. He says the universe, also in the context of mediation, this particular quote from the Hind Swaraj is extremely important, and rather I will say centrifugal to his approach to humanistic mediation. Like again, I read it out for you. The force of love is the same as the force of the soul of truth. We have evidence of its working at every step. The universe would disappear without the existence of that force. Thousands, indeed tens of thousands, depend on their existence on a very active working of this force. Little quarrels of millions of families in their daily lives disappear before the exercise of this force. Two brothers quarrel, one of them repents and reawakens the love that was lying dormant in him. The two again begin to live in peace. So very important aspect of it. And basically, it is so very important to look at very, very important to look at this whole different aspect of Gandhi's understanding of the whole idea. The next important point is on the whole idea of basically also we must understand that Gandhi's humanism has its very deep roots in the spirit of spiritualism. Also, we must understand that his idea of spiritualism also is underscoring the essence of service to humanity and human interconnectedness as, again, very important aspect in the context of mediation. We must understand the essence of human interconnectedness, that I am related to the other person is related to the other person. We are all bound towards a common chain of solidarity, common chain of love, common chain of non-violent connections. Of course, Gandhi's human interconnectedness goes to a higher plane because he is talking of human interconnectedness in the context of the connection between not just human relationship, but also relationship between human and nature, human and all other living beings. And that is something very important context. In this context, possibly if we quote from, again in Harijan, he's saying that the man's ultimate aim is the realization of God. And all his activity, whether they're social, political, religion, have to be guided by the ultimate aim of the vision of God. And then he goes on to say that the immediate service of all human beings becomes a necessary part of the endeavor, simply because the only way to find God is to see him in his creation and be one with him. So again, in the context of mediation, it is so very important when we are talking of the humanistic model of mediation. This whole idea of service, the mediator is doing a service for the humanity. That is an important aspect we need to keep in mind. So far, what we have talked about in this whole idea of humanism is the essence of truth, essence of non-violence, spiritualism, connected with the whole idea of human interconnectedness, and of course the service to humanity. In this context, also we must understand, when we are talking of the Gandhian model to humanistic mediation, is that he is talking about human beings as being interdependent, and which would essentially look at how to discourage different forms of exploitation, dominance, injustice, inequality. And in fact, we all should try to find out ways of how we can institutionalize and nurture the spirit of love, truthfulness, social service, cooperation, and solidarity. And that is the essence of his mediation. That is the essence of how a Gandhian mediator need to look at different aspects of mediation, how she or he could approach the whole idea of mediation. So also, we must talk about, in fact, Henry will talk in detail about that. I'm just flagging up this next issue, that Gandhian humanism highlights the significance of pure inward consciousness, because he feels that, that there is a need of purity of one's nature, which is essentially the foundation of his moral principle. And in fact, Gandhi goes on to say further in one of the quotes that I'm more concerned in preventing the brutalization of human nature than in the prevention of the sufferings of his own people. Also, again, a very important aspect in his model of mediation would be his underlining the inherent good of humankind as the construct of his foundation of morality and religion. That is something very important. And in fact, Gandhiji writes in Ethical Religion that his desire and motives may be divided into two classes, selfish and unselfish. The selfish desires are immoral, whereas the desire to improve ourselves for the sake of doing good to others is truly moral. So that means the Gandhian mediator essentially is someone who is inwardly conscious that she or he needs to contribute to the whole approach, to the process of trying to bring in love and reconciliation for the sake of doing good to others as actually being truly moral. Also, another very important aspect of his humanism is that we should not try to see only fault with anyone else and sit in judgment over him. We need not be judgmental. We should not be exhausted judging ourselves only, and so long as we notice a single fault in ourselves and wish our relations and friends not to forsake us in spite of such fault, we have no right to poke our nose into other people's fault. This is what Gandhi says, and it is from Mahadev Desai, is the diary of Mahadev Desai. So another important aspect of according in the Gandhian scheme of things, the individual is extremely important. He has put a lot of emphasis on the individual, and he says the individual is the supreme consideration. And in fact, he says that if the individual ceases to count, what is left of the society? So I, as an individual, how I can improve myself, how we can contribute to the betterment of the society, how I can contribute to the good of the others. And in fact, it also focuses on how the individual, according to the Gandhian scheme of things, leads, cements his relationship with others, by changing oneself. And in fact, Gandhi goes on to say that, non-violence is essentially contagious if it is conducted in the right spirit. That is again very important. Another important dimension which is important of Gandhian model of humanism is his focus on promoting utmost sincerity in all our endeavors. That is again very important. The Gandhian mediator needs to be utmostly sincere in all our individual focus. And the last point which I like to highlight is the essence of his idea of humanism, its emphasis on the ends and the means. And in fact, according to Gandhi, there was no separation between the ends and the means. And he writes in Young India that they say means are after all means. I would say means are after all everything. As the means, so the end. So there is no wall of separation between the means and the end. So I can't use unethical means or wrong means to go to my end result. That is again an important point to be considered in this whole idea of Gandhian humanism. So these are some important highlights of the Gandhian humanism, which will lead to which has resulted on three of us working together to move towards our trying to construct the Gandhian model of humanistic mediation. So I think this is something, and the last one I would like to share a very interesting quote before I finish is by one of the very great follower of Mahatma Gandhi, who is also called the Italian Gandhi, Lasso del Vasto. And in fact, he's talking about the essence of truth at a UNESCO symposium, and he says the outside as the inside. It is obvious that with the inside of others, we have no direct contact, but only through the outside. We have contact with the inside only within ourselves. Thus, to live and be in truth means that our appearance and our actions should correspond to what we have within us. And I think that is the starting point of our approach. That is what I thought I will share. And now, Vikram, back to you, please.
Thank you, Vedabhyas. So basically, you've put a lot of onus on the mediator, the morals and the heart, soul, and spirituality, which is what I showed you, that Vision 2026. For me, actually, that heart, soul, and spirituality is a very important aspect of mediation, which got lost somewhere for whatever reason. We'll get it back. Vedabhyas, we'll get it all back. So, but Henry, so you want to take it forward from here, and then we'll maybe at the end, we'll discuss these things that I want to put across also. So, Henry, please.
Yes. So thank you, Vedabhyas, for this wonderful insights on Gandhian humanism, and where I would like to start actually is with the definition, Vikram, that you've shared with us earlier. And fundamentally, if we look at that definition, the focus is on the result. The focus is on the result, and the result is settlement. And so this is how this approach to mediation, Gandhian approach to mediation, actually fundamentally differs from the conventional, what you're sharing approach to mediation. And that is, the focus is not on the results. Settlement may happen, but that's a side effect. That's not the goal. What is the goal? The goal is actually what we're trying to say in this is how we approach the mediation process, both as mediators and as parties. The means that we engage through in the mediation process. So what it is that we are doing is just as important, if not as important, and if not more important, than what happens at the end. Whether at the end there is some kind of settlement, whether at the end there is some kind of resolution, but more importantly, and this is where I think there are some parallels with the transformative models of mediation. The ultimate goal of this approach is that everyone who comes to the table, including the mediator, and starting with the mediator, walks away knowing something more about themselves, the other party, or the world that they did not know before. And this is where we are talking about the importance of spirituality. This is where we are talking about the importance of tuning inward. And so many mediation approaches and trainings, focus on skills development. This is how you ask a question, and this is how you, move parties towards a settlement. This is how you conduct a caucus. All of these things, and all of these things have some relevance and have some importance. What is talked relatively little about is how is the mediator coming to the room? What personal practice, what personal work are they doing? And the goal, the ultimate invitation, is that as mediators, we come as peace. So that ahimsa, the teaching of ahimsa, that of course was so critical to Gandhi's life, but also predates Gandhi by many, many centuries, and is so integral to many traditional Hindu and other indigenous teachings. What do we mean by ahimsa, in the context of mediation? Is it enough that we don't hurt puppies, we don't hit puppies, and we don't use words that are bad, and maybe occasionally we give money to charity? Is that enough for us to truly live ahimsa? And I will suggest that it is not, that there is a lot more to that. And looking at the example of Mahatma Gandhi's life, what I see ahimsa is becoming intimately aware of our own propensity for violence, and then doing something about it. So what do we do about it? This is where the importance of personal spiritual practice comes in, where daily ahimsa becomes not just a concept or a vague idea, but it becomes a practice. So every day we connect with the practice of ahimsa. And then it becomes the experience. So we experience ahimsa in our day-to-day lives. We experience nonviolence. And then finally, it becomes our state. No matter what is happening in the outside world, no matter who said what, no matter who did what, we're able to show up to the outside world as peace, as nonviolence. And then from there, what happens when we start developing that personal practice? Naturally, our perception of the world expands. Naturally, the idea of what is me and what is mine becomes much more expansive. And hopefully, eventually, that idea of what is me and what is mine starts transforming. So most of the time now, and especially with a lot of the Western influenced ideas, we identify very much with our accumulations, right? Whatever, and these includes our ideas, judgments, beliefs, prejudices, likes, dislikes, all of that. Plus, the house we own and the car we drive and, all the other things that we own. So we see these things as us, where in actuality, these things are ours. And this is, I think, the very, very fundamental idea that gets us to the question of truth. So what is truth then, right? Every religion, every preacher, every priest is claiming that they know the truth, right? You can flip through television channels and every channel will tell you that they know the truth. There's one problem. None of them can agree on what the truth actually is. Everyone says they know the truth, right? But no one, whether you listen to the politicians, whether you listen to the preachers, whether you listen to the gurus, everyone claims to know the truth, except that they can't agree what it is. So when we are talking about the mediation, and this is the invitation of the Gandhian model, is that the mediation becomes a quest for truth. It's not the quest for truth that we find, the type of truth that we're talking on TV, or that various religions are talking about. The type of truth that we are talking about is the ultimate truth of who we are. And the ultimate truth of what and who we are not. That we are not all the accumulations, possessions, ideas, judgments, prejudices, beliefs, likes, dislikes, etc., etc., etc. That there is something much, much deeper and greater than that. And that ultimate truth is the humanity that we share. It's the infinite humanity and infinite interconnectedness that we share. And that's the goal of the Gandhian model of mediation. It's not that we reach a settlement, or maybe we don't reach a settlement. It's not that people become best friends or they don't become best friends. All of these is very circumstances dependent, right? Some situations people may reach a settlement. Some situations they may walk away and say, I'm never talking to the other party again. But can we view then mediation as a tool for discovering truth? Again, not some subjective truth, but to discovering the ultimate truth of who we are. And that is the connection with our own humanity and connection with the humanity of other beings. And then, of course, mediation also becomes a tool for social justice. And this is another important piece that in traditional models of mediation, we don't really talk about, where mediation becomes a tool of social justice. Because by discovering the ultimate nature and talking about the ultimate nature, the ultimate truth of who we are, naturally we become more inclusive. And I will suggest this, that at the source of all violence, that we commit, is the idea that someone is the other. There's someone who is the other. And if that idea drops, and to me, that's the ultimate Gandhian teaching. There is no other. There is no other. And if there is no other, then mediation becomes a step towards radical inclusion, where we refuse to other anyone, and where we see all as integral parts of the same whole. And to me, that's fundamentally what this model is about. As opposed to getting to the result, whether it's settlement or some other result, we want to get to the truth. What is the truth? The truth is we're one, we're whole. What happens to you directly impacts me. We all have responsibility for each other because there is no other.
So basically, Henry, Vedabhyas put a lot of onus on the mediator and the mediator's values and everything. You are putting a lot on the parties and how they are going to be part of the process and what they are going to be taking out from it. So we'll get to this, and let's just get Mansi in, and then we'll have a little open discussion on this. Mansi, you want to take us through whatever you were going to take us through? But it will be better if, because Henry and Vedabhyas are good at lip reading. I did not take that class. I was maybe playing golf maybe at that time. Yes, Mansi.
So as Dr. Veda and Henry sir have emphasized that the Gandhian model is all about invoking our, the divine element within us. And this is not just for the mediator, but also for the parties. Because, Gandhi is is a man who is not looking at only, like we read in the definition, that finding an amicable solution for the parties. No, every act of his was aimed at bringing about something good for the humanity at large. So mediation to him uh, is not just another mechanism of dispute resolution, but it is a weapon of social change. When Gandhi talks about mediation, you see why in the legal system, you see there is an opportunity to keep on appealing against the judgment. And in a way, one or the other party is trying to evade what is truth. To the acceptance of truth is delayed, and that is why we keep on approaching the higher courts, the appellate courts, until and unless we have exhausted all the opportunities available. So here in Gandhian model, the emphasis is on acceptance of truth. Here, the change has to come from within. It is a transformative approach towards an individual by invoking the human elements within all of us. There, we all are, in our disposition, we are gray. We all have some good elements. We all have some bad elements, which are present in all of us. But how we nourish the good elements and how we eliminate the bad ones is what makes the difference. So the Gandhian model is not just about finding an immediate solution. It is not about resolving everything which is in the moment, but it is also about ensuring that the peace which comes through this process is everlasting. So here we are not just managing the conflict, trying to resolve it, but we are also trying to transform the entire scenario, not just for the present circumstances, but also for the future times. To me, as Henry has emphasized, it is more of a transcendental approach, where I say we are trying to invoke the divine element present in all of us, where the of course we are trying to find out the ultimate truth of who we are, and we all are equal. There is no other, certainly. But then truth can be relative, and apart from this absolute truth that we all are human beings and we all are equal, we all have same feelings, same perception of life, though it may differ as per our circumstances and backgrounds. But more in by large, we only want happiness. We want to live a happy life. So here in the Gandhian model, the idea is about bringing happiness to the society at large and not just to one individual. So mediator here is not focused on just resolving the conflict, but also making sure that after the process, the parties are transformed into better individuals for the society. For example, if I talk about the Dada Abdullah case, which is referred to in as the landmark case, or as the epic case for whenever somebody is pushed into the alternate dispute resolution mechanisms. So in Dada Abdullah case, Gandhi, from the very beginning, though he was representing a party, was sure that he wants justice to prevail, one, that truth should be there, but also the element of non-violence should be present. So when I talk about non-violence, it means that there should be no injustice done to anyone, and also the opponent party. For Gandhi, nobody was an opponent, but in the adversarial system, we address parties as such. So the parties which are pitted against each other, none of them should suffer a loss which is inhuman in nature. So though the dispute was resolved through arbitration, as we have read in Hind Swaraj, that Gandhi was he was against the profession of lawyers, the profession which we have been pursuing, because he believed that they just want to, earn money, they want to fill their pockets, and they have no element of humanity in them. But here, that is why the main idea of Gandhi insisting on alternate dispute resolution was that he wanted the parties to save money, and so he insisted upon arbitration. But after that arbitration, he took up the role of a mediator. So once the judgment was delivered through an arbitrator, uh, then what happened was he insisted that Dada Abdullah should not ask Tayyabji Seth, who was a distant cousin of Dada Abdullah, to pay the entire amount in one go, because this would render him bankrupt. And in their tradition, if somebody goes bankrupt, death is preferred over bankruptcy. So here, Gandhi insisted that the other party should not suffer. The acceptance of truth should come gradually, and no harm should be done which cannot be reversed. So no irreversible loss to both the parties is what is the idea of Gandhi mediation for Gandhi. And here also I would insist that, you see, these days youngsters stress a lot on their freedom, the freedom to choose, the freedom to live, the freedom to speak. So Swaraj, we have been insisting since time immemorials. And let me tell you, mediation is a step forward in that direction, because when you talk about Swaraj or self rule in terms of politics, it is about ensuring that there is political decentralization. When we talk in economic terms, we talk about Swadeshi. And if we have to talk in legal terms, Swaraj shall come through mediation, because here the parties are going to decide about their own fate. So it is in a form, mediation is, a form of Swaraj. It can ensure that you are the master of your own life, and also you get a full say on what and how things should turn out. So mediation is just, a manifestation of Swaraj in the legal field, a representation of your own choices. Because you see, as Veda sir has insisted that rights and duties are very important in the Gandhian thought. So Gandhi here insists that when we are in the process of mediation, we should take care of both the things, right means, and which will gradually lead us to a right end. So rights will come only when duties are performed. So here the parties are getting, they are transformed, they are conditioned into understanding that they have a part in to play in a society, and this part is very crucial for the existence of society, because every individual is a weapon of change. There is immense potential in every individual to bring about, some kind of revolution in the society, be the change you wish to see in the world. So here for Gandhi, mediation is a weapon of social change, and therefore he is not looking at it just another process of dispute resolution. He is looking at it in a larger frame, as something which will bring about change in the society, something which will help us resolve our conflicts and build peace everywhere in the world.
Yes. So Mansi,
Am
we'll
I
come. Yeah,
audible?
yeah, yeah. We didn't hear anything. You were on mute throughout. Not one word we heard of you.
Ah,
Yeah, we were thinking that
oh
you
God.
unmute yourself and you did not unmute yourself. Doesn't matter. It's okay. We just said maybe we can lip read and a lot of people can lip read. So not a problem. Thank you very much. No, no, we heard you, but we'll come back to you. I want to come back to you. Please give us some more examples also of
Sure,
actual
sir. Sure, sir.
or actual cases of matters which were taken up by Gandhi. So Vedabhyas, main thing is you put a very high standard for the mediator. But over these years, since Gandhiji had maybe spoken about mediation, where have you been able to come across such people that have that kind of those values and everything that you were talking about?
So let me tell you that I know one such person, and that is Dr. Vedabhyas Kundu. So
Wow.
it is very much possible. He's a man who has been practicing whatever he's preaching. So
But is he
yes,
acting
it
as a
is.
mediator? Is he also acting as a mediator?
Yes, yes, sir. Yes,
Oh,
yes.
good. So then we
Dr.
don't need
Veda is.
just the job done. Okay, we'll have you doing all that. But please, just tell us, besides you, is there anyone that you've come across and what have you been able to see in those people? So Vedas also wants us to, you'll have to unmute
Yeah,
yourself. Yeah.
yeah, Vikram. Let me tell you, I am not the only person in this quote unquote crime. The partner is Madam Mansi Sharma.
Mhm.
Both of us have done a few online mediation till now, and it has been a good experience. Of course, when we are talking of some of these, no, the individual according to the Gandhian perspective, that is something a very tall order. Let us be practical. Let us be really be practical in today's contemporary scenario. That is something, those standards are too they're simple to follow, but it is quite difficult to follow, let me tell you. So but the whole idea is that how we move towards that particular approach of Gandhi that we have talked about, which I was telling, which Henry was talking about, and which Manshi elucidated with the example of Dada Abdullah case. And of course, there were the other cases like the Pune Pact, or various other cases of what Gandhi was doing. What is important, because you see why Gandhi is so special in that sense, in that context. I will give you a small little example. I will give you not an example of mediation, of course, but you see why Gandhi is revered all across the world when we are talking about this standard. As we all know, this whole citizens protest movement is going on in Sudan. There was a military coup some time back, and there is citizens non-action going on. I am part of this interesting WhatsApp group where almost everyone are Africans except a few odd people us out like me. There is this student leader in one of the universities over there, and he shared one day one of the post in the WhatsApp group. You see, we are following a very peaceful protest movement here in Sudan from the citizens protest movement, and we are following the principles of Gandhi and Nelson Mandela. Great people, he says, we are following the great people like Gandhi and Nelson Mandela. So, these are some of the points that we were talking of Gandhi's humanism, that Henry was talking about the tuning inwards and inner consciousness, or Manshi was talking about those idea of truth and absolute truth versus relative truth. That probably makes Gandhi probably different from others, which entails that someone sitting in Sudan is also referring, or some of the my own experience or Mansi's own experience with different groups, working with different international groups. That is the river that is there. Possibly none of us have been able to achieve that, or we are nowhere in picture in vis-a-vis those standards. Possibly that's why I'm sure we have not been able to make a mark like that, possibly like Gandhi. But the whole idea is that in the backdrop of practicality, how an individual can nurture himself or herself towards those those principles, those ethical formulas, those ethical principles which Gandhi was talking about, and move towards becoming a efficient mediator in that way. That is, I think, a big challenge. And in that context, I think what we need to do is promote some of these ideas. At this stage, we are all talking in ideation, ideation stage of the Gandhian model of humanistic mediation. It is like possibly only three of us, my Henry, Mansi, and myself, and now you're the fourth person to actually look at this whole thing. And then, of course, we need to promote it. We need to bring discourses on this aspect. Also, what is important is that I strongly feel is that try to in the whole world of mediation, try to promote it as why should anyone try to look at it seriously only if it is if there is a efficacy in this whole model, only if this model is really good for humankind. Otherwise they will think it is just a utopian dream. When we are talking of the Gandhian model of humanistic mediation, it is possibly not possible in the real world and the contemporary society. But we need to we need to underline that this is definitely an important uh, thing that needs to be looked at, and it is more relevant than ever before. When we are talking of mediation at all levels, whether at the community level, individual family levels, or uh, even at the global level. That is, yesterday I was having this, we were having this session with the Indian High Commission in Zambia, and I actually talked about this model there and said that we are trying to work on this. So there was a lot of interest. The vice chancellor of that one of the universities asked about this model. I said we are still working on that. So I think there needs to be more research, and we need to promote and make it more people more aware of this efficacy of this model. Then possibly there will be more takers to look at it more seriously. It should go beyond say three of us or four of us trying to put together and put together in in a publication or so on and so forth. We need to actually get into the field and try to see, yes, this is definitely a possible model that can, it is a possible workable model. A model can only be accepted if it is workable. Otherwise it will just become something like you are putting it in a cupboard and nothing beyond that. So we have to make it workable, make it practical, show it to the world that it is definitely a good model that we can actually internalize and use it in actual mediation processes.
So that's
Yes.
the thing is that I was also like I was I mean I've been talking to you when I keep talking to you about this, is that the first thing is those people with look, we are saying that there are certain very high ideals and values and everything that we expect from the mediator. So now those people are out there. It's not that they're not out there, it's just that, and they're also practicing it, which is why, Henry, that I was talking about these people, these teachers that we were speaking about, and the names that they
Yes.
came out with. Those names
Absolutely.
are people who are out there. They are respected, trusted by society. It is something which we just have to go out and just ask people. I'm saying in families, in communities, everywhere. Those people exist. It's just that we don't value them.
Absolutely.
So first thing is that,
Absolutely.
first of all, do we as a society, are we valuing those values itself? That's the first thing. So that part of it, first we
Absolutely.
have to ask ourselves that, yes, are we going to that direction? Second is the people who are actually practicing it and actually helping people resolve their disputes, which is happening out there. Are we
Absolutely.
valuing that process by itself and those people? So that is what I think, that is where I want to really focus on that part. Because if you have the right people and the whole concept of valuing them actually as part of society. I'm saying, I was giving that example, Henry, in that session. I said, look, you go to a lawyer and you people sell off their land also to maybe fight the case. But these people who are actually the names that came out from that discussion, I asked them, then what do you give them something? Those people who are actually helping you resolve the dispute? Yeah, we give them love and affection. So love and affection for these people, and for those people who can take you through a dispute for 20 years, we will sell off our land. So I think this is the gap. If we can meet that gap, then I think we bring out the right people. So, of course, Henry, please, you wanted to say something. Yeah.
Also, just a second. In 5 minutes, I would request to permit me, all three of you, to
No,
leave it.
that's not happening. 9:30. Come off it. You have to give this much for
So
Gandhiji. What is
I,
this?
I, I will have to, get ready because I have to conduct a session, and that too
Okay.
with the Spanish translation. So I would humbly request all three of you to kindly grant me permission in 5 minutes.
Permission not granted. If we go majority wise, if I'm saying no, Mansi also says no, then you're gone. If Henry says no, you can't. So please, you.
This is a small little request.
As a mediator here, I will not take the position on Vedabhyas' request, but of course it's totally understandable, and I know that Vedabhyas is involved in so many amazing international efforts, and I second what Mansi said earlier, is that Vedabhyas is one of the people who truly lives all of these values, and that's why it's such an honor, for me to be connected with both of you, to be connected with you, Vikram, as this is an example, of people who are living this. But I'd like to speak on a couple different things. So first of all, we have to get away from the idea that mediator has to be perfect and kind of a perfect embodiment of these values that we're talking about. What we're talking about when we're talking about humanistic approach to mediation is, first and foremost, we're talking about humanity. And that means that mediator must be intimately connected with their own humanity. And this is what gets us to the essence of compassion, really the highest value that we can espouse, in my view, as mediators. And that is, what is compassion? Compassion is knowing that we can never truly be in another person's shoes. We can never truly know and understand their experience. But by virtue of being connected to our own humanity, to our own pain, to our own shortcomings, we're able to also see and experience that pain in another being. And so the key idea here is that for mediator to truly be effective as an agent of change, as an agent of transformation, which is what Mansi talked about, that the importance then is to have a personal practice. Again, it's not about some idea of perfection, some idea that, because perfection is sterile. Perfection is not living. Gandhi never claimed perfection in his writing, as Vedabhyas talked about. His autobiography is called My Experiments with Truth. And as advanced as Gandhiji was in all of the things that he's done, he's confessing all his shortcomings, and he's confessing how imperfect and imprecise he was. So the importance of that personal self-reflective practice, I think, is absolutely critical to this approach. And to me, this is really the most fundamental difference that distinguishes this approach from other approaches. And that is the need for the mediator as a peace builder to have a personal practice, a practice they're committed to, a personal mindfulness practice. And the goal of that practice, so very Western approach, right, to mindfulness and to self-reflection, is we do this to feel better. And that is maybe to reduce stress, maybe, lower blood pressure, all of those things. But I would suggest that here we want to engage in these practices to actually get better at feeling. So as people show up to us as mediators, as peace builders, we have the capacity, and we continuously enhance our capacity to better understand where they are, to meet them where they are, to go beyond their positions, beyond even their interests, beyond their emotions, beyond their values, and most importantly, to their core humanity, to their most fundamental needs. So as mediators, for us to have the capacity to be able to do that, to be able to hold space for someone in such a way, this is where, as mediators, we need to do personal practice. We need to be going deeper and deeper within. Of course, as one of the most profound lessons from the Bhagavad Gita teaches us, right? Establish yourself in yoga first, and then act from there. None of the Gandhian teachings and none of the teachings that I gained from India, and as all of you are so well aware, these are not teachings in pacifism, right? These are not teachings in passivity and just not taking the action. It's where the action is coming from. It's where the action is coming from. And so by virtue of mediators and peace builders and peacemakers engaging in that personal practice, who then are able to show up as peace to whatever may be the conflict interaction, that itself becomes transformative. It's too much to ask, right, for the parties to conflict, to be doing practice, or for them to show up in a particular way. They show up the way they show up. It is our job then, as mediators, to create space for them, not only where they can have meaningful dialogue, but a space where all of us, and that includes us, can tune in, can observe without evaluating, so that creates space for deep listening, expand, meaning we start moving away from binary, limited ideas of conflict, and finally to explore, approaching conflict as an opportunity for dialogue, as an opportunity for growth, as an opportunity for intimate and ultimate connection.
Yes, Henry, definitely. But I'm still wanting to create that distinction between the value system and actually being a mediator, because finally you are there to help parties resolve the dispute. So you might bring in all the value system, but at the same time you are still there, like I said, to resolve a dispute. So on the process part of it, anything on the process part of it, do you want to talk about that?
Sure. So the process part becomes really, first of all, on the process part, I think it's important that we don't take a dogmatic approach, right? That there's only one way to mediate, and if we mediate this way, we can't talk to the people who mediate slightly different ways. And this is where the values become important, right? Because the values guide then the tools that we use. If the value is that ultimately we're trying to create space for expansive dialogue, not expansive in terms of money, but expansive where everyone's worldview expands, then everything we do, all the tools that we use, become means to that end, right? And then we use tools appropriate for the situation. So in some situation, the proper techniques may be for us, to be very hands-off and to really, just let the parties do their thing, and for us not to step in. And in other situations, appropriate call for us maybe to become a lot more engaged. And this is where also, in terms of the practice and tools, we have to challenge the idea of neutrality. This is such a fundamental teaching, right, that mediators are neutral. But I think it's just sterility, right? That we just come in and we have no experience and no views and no values, and we're just there strictly, as almost as a piece of furniture, right? Not influencing anything in any way. And to me, that's not really how things work, right? We do come in with our experiences, backgrounds, prejudices, all of that. And so then as mediators, I think we can start showing up as multi-partial, not as neutral, where we are committed fully. We are partial and committed fully to the process. We're partial and to each of the parties, to ensuring that each of the parties is able to discover what are their needs, why are they here, what is truly important for them. And most people never go through that self-discovery process in mediation. They come in with a position. Underneath the position is interest. Often that interest is driven by fear. Often that interest is dictated by sort of what they think they can get. Very often we don't go deeper than that. And I think whatever on a practical level, whatever tools and skills that we use, Vikram, is about ultimately going deeper and deeper and deeper, and expanding as much as it is possible, because generally the focus in conflict becomes very narrow, right? It becomes about past anxieties, past fears or future anxieties. And then we have this very, very narrow focus on what a resolution may look like. And I think it's our job to expand that as much as it is possible.
But in connection with what you just said, Henry, I just put that up again. I showed this to you, but this is interesting that what Bernie is writing about, the neutrality trap. So this should be an interesting discussion. So please, even if you haven't read try and read the book before that, but please drop in, and I will have this discussion with Bernie on this. So
yeah.
But I think the important thing also, but let's get Mansi in first. Mansi, any other examples you're giving us about actual mediations that Gandhiji, according to you, had done, and something on that? But at the same time, the same problem we're going to face. What do you think, Henry? First, should we go through lip reading classes or what? Yes, Mansi.
No, sir. I hope I am audible now.
Yes, yes.
You are.
Thank you, sir.
But tell me,
So
what is the answer for? What
mediation.
is the answer for that? Can you ever get an answer of no from that for that question? That's one question you can never get an answer no. Because either we hear you or we don't hear you. Okay, please,
Okay.
please. Yeah.
So the process of mediation as per the Gandhian model, in my eyes, is equal to what we call meditation in common parlance. You see, meditation is all about focusing on a particular object, a particular thought, a particular feeling, and developing mindfulness as well as awareness about it. And this is what we are doing in the Gandhian model as well. You see, the mediator, as Henry sir has already mentioned, is a multi-partial mediator. So there is no neutrality. And being multi-partial, he or she is equally situated between both the parties. And just like if any one of, I'm sure we have attended a few sessions on meditation. So in meditation, what is the role of the one who is teaching you meditation? That you try to understand your own situation, go deeper into it, and come up with your own solutions to your life problems. And this is how the Gandhian model works. Herein, we are, the mediator, the Gandhian mediator will try to develop, a deeper understanding in the party about what the situation is. And this is what he has done throughout his lifetime. So if I talk about Pune Pact, the condition of the scheduled class, which we call it now, or the untouchables or the Dalits back then, was very miserable in our society. And since long, they had been, seeking political rights from the Britishers, the rulers, which were present at that time. What happened was that, yes, in order to divide the society, this came as a gift, and a separate, there was some sort of what we call is separate representation or electoral ballot, wherein they're going to elect their own representative out of their own people. So this was vehemently opposed by Gandhi, because he believed that the way they have divided, the Britishers had divided Hindus and Muslims, they're going to create another section in the society through this. So what happened was, he went on to fast. Now here he is making the other parties understand that there is something significant happening around you. It is not any other ordinary matter, and you should reflect upon it. So here the Hindus also, Hindus and as in the upper caste Hindus, they took note of the matter. They tried to understand what was happening and how the Britishers were going to divide their own, the community. Also, the lower caste Hindus or the untouchables were made to understand. They also reflected upon the situation, and they tried to, understand that their emancipation is possible only when they get an equal status in their own community and not as an outsider. So then Dr. B.R. Ambedkar, he went to meet Gandhi in the Yeravada jail of Pune. And Gandhi, he made them understand the, both the sections, not just Hindus, but also the Hindus, say upper caste Hindus, but also the low caste Hindus, that it is, the peace is possible. The goal which both the parties are aiming at is possible only when they unite. And this is how his multi-partial role, he did not represent any, in most of the cases you will see that though he is coming as a representative of some party, say for Champaran for example. So he went there as a representative of the peasants, the farmers. So he went to Champaran because there was a Tin Kathia system in place, wherein the agriculturists or the farmers were forced to plant at least 3 parts out of 20. On 3 parts they were supposed to plant indigo, and which was very difficult for them to sustain, because the synthetic dye was much more popular and cheaper. And also their soil was getting ruined. They could not grow, the fertility was decreasing day by day. And what happened was, though he went there as a representative of the peasants, of the farmers, but he made sure that there is discipline in whatever the the party he's representing is doing. And same was true for the Ahmedabad mill strike as well. So in Champaran also, he took the officials into his confidence. He made them aware of the situation. He made them reflect upon what a good human being should do, being, what is the role of human being in this world. And that is why the process of mediation from the Gandhian aspect is all about invoking the divine elements within us. Though it may seem a utopian idea from far away, but it is not that difficult. Because if we endeavor to understand our own situations, the situations of in which other human beings are placed, then we become mindful of our actions. And this holds true for in every situation. You see, in Pune Pact also, when the lower caste Hindus were made to realize that they will not be emancipated unless and until they find similar or equal footing in their own community. And therefore the reservation was granted, the seats were doubled in number. And Dr. B.R. Ambedkar and Mahatma Gandhi, they signed this Pune Pact, so that this caste, which has been mistreated, marginalized since times immemorials, gets some political representation, gets the seats, and then can bring up their own community at par with what the other upper caste Hindus were. The facilities which were available to them will become available to them, these people as well. In Champaran also, the idea was to understand that you may be a businessman, but ultimately you are a human being and you thrive upon the nature. You see, we all are deriving resources from the nature, and if any resource is depleted, any natural resource is destroyed completely, who is going to suffer it at the end? We all are going to suffer collectively. And this is what we are experiencing when we talk about climate change or environmental degradation. Though some people might exploit it for their own benefit, but ultimately the humanity at large suffers. So therefore, here also Gandhi insisted that we should look at, he was Mahatma because he looked at every problem from a larger perspective. He never thought of just finding a solution to that very particular problem at hand, but also to send a message across to people who are witnessing it, that this is how you should behave in order to live in peace, in order to flourish together. And interestingly, he never had any animosity against anyone. He went in Ahmedabad. What was happening? Let me share about Ahmedabad mill strike. That there was this plague bonus which was given to the laborers in the mills. But what happened was, once the situation normalized, the mill owners thought that now we did not give them this kind of surplus amount, and we should rationalize it to some extent so that our profits also increase. On the humanitarian ground, they had been giving a lot of facilities to the laborers earlier, because they had started migrating back to their own native places. But then later on they thought of just withdrawing some facilities. But the laborers insisted that because the inflation is very high now, they need the same wages which were given to them during the plague, when the plague persisted. What happened is, now the owners and the laborers, they started using unfair means to influence each other. And then Gandhi was, he was requested to come and solve the problem. I again emphasize that Gandhi was a multi-partial mediator. He never looked at anybody as a victim and another as oppressor. He only looked at people placed in a circumstance as per their situation or position in that particular situation. He had very good relationships with the capitalists as well, because trusteeship is one principle which he has been advocating for economic growth. He believed that if you have a potential for growth, you should use that for the betterment of society at large. So he was never against people earning. He only wanted them to spend it for the betterment of the society after their basic needs are fulfilled. So here he made sure that he is mindful of the situation of the mill owners as well. And he he disciplined the entire satyagraha, or the movement, the strike which was going on. He insisted that the laborers undergo some kind of internal change as well. They should look at every situation or every conflict. To Gandhi was an opportunity to bring about change in an individual. And that is why he insisted that there should be some kind of social change as well through this conflict. The laborers should emphasize on educating themselves, on understanding their rights as well as their duties towards the mill owners, and how a strike should be conducted so as to the owners, the capitalists are also not harmed, because the human angle should always remain in any mediation process. The opponent should not be ruined in the name of justice. There should be something which he or she should look up to as something, that the light of hope, which will keep him or her going in the future. So in the Ahmedabad mill strike as well, he significantly reduced that bonus price, though he at the same time made sure that the laborers are able to earn a decent wage, but the owners also, the mill owners also, do not suffer. So though the laborers were asking for a very high rate of interest, he reduced it to 35%, and also made sure that the entire process of satyagraha or the strike, he has always called any movement or any agitation as satyagraha, because it is all about finding the truth and accepting it, and the acceptance should come from both the sides. So they amicably agreed to what was offered by Gandhi. But also at the same time, he showed them the way. He showed all others the way, that this is how you should behave in a particular situation. You should be mindful of not just what you're seeking, but you should also be mindful that the other person will not suffer in that. So this is how Ahmedabad mill strike worked. And also, like Henry sir has already mentioned, that it is not that this is some kind of a magic formula which will work in every situation. It is highly dependent on our human nature, on our human instincts, and that is why the mediator may fail in bringing about a solution to the situation at a particular time. Say, for example, Noah Khali. Noah Khali Gandhi went there before the partition of the country. He, though he brought about a change in the perception of people towards each other, he met them personally. He built a personal bond with them, which is very important for a mediator in the Gandhian process of mediation, because he or she is a multi-partial mediator. So you should connect with the parties. Though he was able to bring the parties together to some extent, but he could not end that violence, and it continued on the northern side of the northern border of the country. It was disastrous. The violence was disastrous, but gradually things improve through mediation, though it may not bring about an immediate resolution to the conflict. So it is not that we are saying that it is a magic formula, you do it, it is done by somebody divine. It is about invoking the divine elements inside you. It is about moving from a mundane man to Mahatma, and which is a possibility for all of us, not just Gandhi.
But first thing I think maybe what to tell people is that Mahatma means Maha is great and Atma is soul. So great soul, that's why we call him that. So that's why Mahatma, because people might not know what is his Mahatma. So let's just explain that.
Right.
The other question, which is important question you have to answer, that are you in the fields of Champaran because Henry is sitting in the park outside? You are sitting inside the
No,
fields?
no.
It
I am
seems.
just using a background,
Oh, I
sir.
thought maybe the fields of Champaran you decided, let us get
No,
sit in
no,
the
no, no,
fields of
no. So I
Champaran
am
and
at
get
my
that motivation. Okay, the issues that
no.
are coming up, which and Henry will also be, he will take him in on that, that on whatever you said, first of all, it comes out as Gandhi ji giving the direction, or he's saying this has to be done, or he's doing all that. So from that end, we have to discuss it on that. Again, I go back to the definition, not have the authority to impose a solution. Now, the authority, moral authority, is moral authority also, of course, that's also an authority. So are we saying that is it really mediation? Then fasting comes up, the Gandhiji fasting, and saying that okay, this seems to be the solution, you take it all kind of thing. Did he have that moral authority on those people? So was it really mediation? So let's bring that. Henry, please. Okay. You understood what I'm saying, so you'll be able to give more, tell us more, elaborate on that.
Yes. So a couple things here. I would absolutely agree, that as mediators, it is not up to us, right, to make the decision. It is up to us to create space for the parties to have as meaningful of an interaction as possible. But the more fundamental question becomes, what do we see mediation as, right? Do we see it merely as a tool of settlement, that we can help people settle some dispute and maybe save them some money or whatever? Or do we see this as a tool of transformation? And if we see this as a tool of transformation, then we cannot approach mediation as mediators, as peace builders, as merely a party sitting outside looking in, right? So, and this is where kind of this idea of multi-partiality comes in. We're just sort of sitting outside, we're peeking into the window and let them do what they want. If the goal of the mediation, some kind of expansion and transformation, then we have to be the example of that. We have to show our own commitment and our own willingness to go within ourselves and to do our own self-work, because anything we're asking the parties to do, we have to be doing ourselves. And so to me, this is not about telling the parties what to do, or, of course, Gandhi, when we are talking about Gandhi's involvement in conflicts, he was not merely a mediator. His involvement was much more multifaceted and multidimensional. He clearly had an interest, and he clearly had a position that he was advancing. And I'm not suggesting that as mediators we need to become that. But ultimately, Gandhi's life was an example of a person who was willing to go within. What made Gandhi into Mahatma, a man who was fairly meager, who was shy famously, right, who was not a great student, became a father of a nation, such a complicated nation, with so many different layers, so many different interests, so many different competing ideas, and even the whole idea of nationhood, right? For India, again, as I know, right, so many people did not identify as Indians. They identified as Punjabi. They identified as wherever, someone from the south. They identified from Kerala and any other region, rather than as a nation. What made it possible was his willingness to go within, his own personal practice, his own willingness to listen to all sides, to all parties, without evaluating, without inserting himself in first. Yes, then he might take the idea and he might go from there. And that's what I think is important for us, to come with that willingness to mediation, that we're not going to be afraid of emotions, that we are not going to come with some kind of predisposed idea of what should be and then try to drive parties towards that. Being absolutely open and being with the parties, meeting them where they are. And this is when we talk about multi-partiality, this is what it means, right? That we are not removed somewhere on a pedestal and we're just, letting them fight. We're in there with them. We're supporting all of them. We're supporting all of them in the process of self-discovery. But here is the key. We're also engaging in that process. We're also engaging in that process of self-discovery. We're also conducting our own personal practice. We're also going within as the parties are doing the same. So I don't know, Vikram, if that answers your question, if that clarifies a little bit about what we're talking about, because this is not about at all taking a position and directing an outcome. It's rather meeting parties where they are and really deeply connecting with their needs and empowering the parties. And this is, Mansi talked about this, which is something very important, moving from problem solving to empowerment, right? Moving from problem solving to empowerment, empowering the parties to discover their own needs, to discover what is truly important for them. For us to be able to do that, we as mediators, we as peace builders, need to be very connected with our own needs, with our own feelings, with our own shortcomings, with all that is arising within us. Because ultimately, by connecting with what's within us, by doing our own interpersonal practice, we're connecting with everything and everyone else around the world.
But the multi-partial, Ken Cloak says omnipartial, so he's got the similar concept there. But where I'll tell you where I'm going on this is that we keep talking about these traditional mediators. We have, say, rabbis were mediators, or priests were mediators. Now the thing is that whenever you have that discussion, it all comes down to them telling you what to do. Okay, I've been saying it's not if you have a choice and you don't have to accept it, and someone coming from maybe a certain moral authority, maybe whatever that way they come in, and you are still given a choice, but that person brings in a certain solution. Social pressure or moral pressure, is it that bad? I keep saying that. Is it that bad? I mean, what is wrong with having social pressure? What is wrong if you have to be part of a community to be able to say, okay, this person brings in this, whatever values and everything, and the solution is based on that. And taking that solution, although you have a choice not to take it, that choice should be there. I'm saying that choice definitely should be there. So bringing that in and having that social pressure or the moral pressure, I don't see too much it's being wrong. Although, because I keep hearing this criticism of traditional mediation on this aspect, that this person, it was telling them what to do. What's wrong with that? I mean, just telling them in the sense, giving you a choice, but suggesting something based on morality or anything, I don't think I don't feel there's anything wrong with that. I don't know what you feel on that, Henry. What do you say? And then Mansi, I'll get you in on this.
And I think here the important piece, Vikram, is not the suggestion itself. I don't see anything wrong with the suggestion, but where does the suggestion come from? Right? I think that's the more important question. Is the suggestion coming from an idea that I know what's best for you, and I'm going to just tell you what it is that you need to do? Or is it coming from me deeply engaging with you and listening to you and understanding and really trying to understand what is important for you, right? And then to understand what is important for Mansi. And then out of that, if certain clarity emerges and certain picture emerges, if I verbalize that, right, and suggest, well, what I'm hearing, what I'm seeing is this, and this is not based on my idea, but it is based on what is needed for you, then I think there's absolutely that's exactly what's needed. Whereas if I come in, right, if I come in and sort of with my idea of what should be, and I could care less about what you say and what you need and where that's coming from, right? And I just say to you, well, Vikram, this is what you need to do, right? This would be incredibly intrusive, disrespectful, and not what we're talking about. So I think, and this is where I adhere to what our good friend Ken Cloak teaches. And I know, Vikram, you've talked to Ken, and Mansi, you know about Ken Cloak. And in his book, Mediating Dangerously, in so many ways, he talks about how, as mediators and peace builders, it's not about having one way, one dogmatic idea. We are the facilitative mediator, and then we are, transformative mediator, and God forbid, if we ever are seen together, if we ever play golf, if we ever go to lunch, because we have our own way of doing things and we don't talk to the other people. This is not what's needed. As mediators, the idea for us is very flexible, and for us to meet the parties where they are. And this is the essence Gandhi was talking about. As I hear Mansi, and as I was talking to Vedabhyas, it's when we're so connected to the people, to their needs, sensitive, we're able to meet them where they are. We're able to see what is needed in the situation. In a particular situation, we may need to be a little bit more directive, because the parties come to us and say, well, what are we supposed to talk about? We have no idea, right? And I think in no situation, it would be insane for us, if we have the experience and we know what the situation is, for us not to tell them, right, what the situation is. And then another situation may call for us to be much more hands-off and just really creating space. I think it's not about one approach or one action. It's where that action is coming from. So another analogy I would use, we can be talking about the fruit, and that is ultimately how to resolve the conflict. We could be talking about the tree, and that is maybe the quality of communications in conflict. But I think it's most important for us to start with the seed, right? And the seed is where that action is coming from. And this is where we come back to, the personal practice of the mediator. What is mediator themselves, herself, himself doing to create that space for the parties? The parties are not just able to come to settlement, but that the parties, just by mere presence of the mediator, are able to engage with each other on a much deeper level. And they're able to move from positions and interests to engaging on the level of their very own, of their very humanity.
Because I think the important thing that I'm seeing from all this is that there is a certain moral, maybe I don't say high moral grounds that a mediator should come from, and everything has to be tested on the mediator's morality or going through that. I think you have to be a little careful on that aspect of it, because sometimes maybe you might push that a little too far, which also might not be good for the process. I don't know what you feel about that.
Yeah, and I want to hear on this. Just want to add, I mean, this is critical, right? This is that we are not some. Every religion in the world, right? And I have to be very careful about how I say it and phrase it, but every religion in the world claims their moral truth and claims that they know, right? And you can flip through the channels on television, certainly in the United States, and I suspect I've watched enough Indian television to know that to some extent in India too, right? Various people claiming that they have moral authority and they know, and these people are bad and these people are good. And it all comes down to a very, very binary approach. So this is very, very dangerous. I think when we are talking actually about moral authority, what we are talking about is humility, deep, profound humility, right? As a mediator, knowing that actually how much we don't know, knowing the ultimate truth is that we don't know. We don't know so much. You know, every situation we're seeing, we're looking at the world through a peephole. And that's what I think the critical importance is, right? That mediators not coming from some high moral authority. In essence, the deep humility, the willingness to say, look, I don't know. I don't know what the right thing is here. I don't know enough about you. I don't know enough about the situation. In a way, that's what gives that moral authority, right? That's what creates space for the mediator to engage in very, very deep listening, to ask profound questions that truly move the conversation, truly move the conflict forward. It's not coming in with some arrogant idea, right, that I know. And from my readings of Gandhi's works, one thing that comes across through and through, you know, this great man who became a father of the nation, all his life, he was practicing humility. All his life, he was bowing down to someone. And that's what gave him the ultimate power. And that's what gave him the ultimate moral authority, in that he was able to come to a situation, be humble, be completely open, be willing to engage, be willing to listen, to listen to all sides, and be willing to be wrong. Be willing to change his ideas and not be so attached to a particular way of seeing things. So I think when we talk about morality, this is where we have to be careful. It's not, you know, some high-flying, convoluted idea that we're talking about. It's actually what we're talking about is humility, openness, knowing how little we know about every experience, and especially about every other human being.
On the other aspect of the process, I mean, on one end, you say that, look, it's not about the settlement, it's about the larger aspect of transformation or change or whatever a person brings in within. I'm still saying that, do we need to push it that far if the parties are settling and finishing off that dispute? Should we still push them to become better human beings and transform things around them? There also, I think that should there be a line, okay, this is now done, let's move on kind of thing, or should we still want to create that larger good? I mean, well, Mansi, I'll get you that into that also. Yeah, Henry, please.
So it's what's needed in a situation. You know, sometimes what's needed in it. Look, if I call a plumber, right, and we have a dispute about the plumber's bill, settling that bill and settling that dispute is the best thing that can happen, right? We don't need to get into, so it's fundamentally knowing what is needed in the situation. I am not saying, Vikram, by the way, that settlement is bad or wrong. Settlement is wonderful. Sometimes it is the best possible outcome, and we need to be very mindful of that. It's just that I want to suggest it's not the only outcome. And sometimes in searching for settlement or seeking settlement, we overlook the larger issues that may be there. And we overlook the opportunities that may be there for further engagement, for expansion, and for transformation. In many disputes, in many conflicts, in many commercial situations, settlement is absolutely needed, and the best thing that needs to happen. It saves a lot of money, it saves a lot of time. And in that, by showing up to that with a particular consciousness, with a particular openness, we're also doing something, right? The parties are talking to each other, they're engaging with anything. So there's nothing wrong with settlement. In some situations, settlement is the most appropriate, perfect solution. It's just that sometimes I'm noticing in the field of mediation, that becomes the only focus. And I think that's dangerous, because if we only focus on settlement, if we're only trying to split the baby in half, right, we're missing a lot of things that can and need be explored. And Gandhi, by the way, was not against settlement. Mansi, I think, can speak to that, right? He's not against settlement. He's not against, but again, it's where the settlement is coming from. Is it coming from pragmatism? Is it a principled settlement? Or is the settlement coerced? Is there an element of coercion? And that's where we start getting into the violence. So there's nothing wrong with settlement. There's nothing wrong with many different outcomes. It's just that settlement is not the only way and not the only thing that's important. So Mansi, I would love to hear from you on that.
Now we'll get Mansi in. But what I'm trying to get at is that on one end, we are trying to say that, okay, parties are settling and they're settling at their terms. At that point of time, is the Gandhian concept of mediation not wanting to accept just that settlement and move beyond that and go into larger issues of change and transformation and other things? Or are we saying that you might not agree with that settlement in terms of your moral values or whatever it might be, but the parties have settled at that on those terms and they're happy settling on those terms? And that kind of a situation, what would be your view in terms of the Gandhian concept? You can come in, Mansi can come in first, whatever. I mean, it's okay. We'll get both of you onto this. Yes, Mansi, you want to come in first?
So settlement in itself, you see, is a transformation, because once you decide that this is the way we are going to handle our dispute, and you are disciplined enough to respect that settlement, you are a transformed individual. Because otherwise you can just keep on bringing back the conflict, you can just keep on raising the issues again and again. And once you agree to a settlement, you agree to abide by certain rules and regulations and certain boundaries which have been set up, or the fences which have been laid down, you certainly are transformed to some extent, however more or less it may be, you see, because it brings an element of discipline inside an individual. It is not easy to accept truth, and settlement in itself means you are accepting something to be true. You are accepting that in a particular situation this is right for you, and if you are disciplined enough to respect that settlement throughout, and if you're not raising the issue again, the settlement in itself is the transformation which was desired. Because to live peacefully, for peaceful coexistence, we need to be disciplined enough to respect each other's boundaries, to respect each other's perspectives.
No,
And this is
question,
what
here the question that Mansi is a little different is, I'm saying that there is a settlement that the parties are getting into, and it goes totally against what your moral concept of life and values and everything goes against all that. But the parties are settling at that. What comes out as, according to you, the Gandhian concept of mediation and the mediator's role in such a situation? That is what my question is.
Maybe let me maybe speak to that a little bit. So Mansi said something very powerful earlier, and I think this is very critical. Part of the Gandhian model is absolutely honoring the self-determination of the parties, right? And honoring where the parties are, and honoring, of course, that humility that as mediators, the parties may be entering an agreement. It may not be the agreement that I would make, right? But also honoring that I don't know all the different aspects and circumstances that may be driving them to the agreement. So I would say that, like in all the other models of mediation, we would honor that agreement the parties are entering. This is not our space to say, don't do this, don't enter that. But I would add to that, and if we're seeing that the parties are entering into that agreement, I think it is very important that then we inquire what's behind this. Do they feel that they are, is there coercion, right? Are there power imbalances that we did not account for? Are there other considerations that maybe we did not go through? Did we explore sufficient number of options that the parties do not feel like they are compelled, like they're compelled to enter into that agreement? So ultimately, this is a very party-centric approach, right? And it is about, as Mansi was saying before, honoring people's self-determination. With that, it is also critical, again, where that agreement is coming from. So is this agreement, are they entering this agreement out of fear? Are they entering this agreement because we as mediators did not do a good job of kind of exploring other options and other issues? Do they feel compelled? Do they feel that this is, for whatever reason, right, it is the best possible outcome out of very bad outcomes? So I think all of these things would need to be explored. Ultimately, absolutely, self-determination of the parties, as Mansi said earlier.
No, but Henry, that would be,
that I
I mean,
think
that's,
is critical.
Well, that would be the normal situation in any kind of mediation. You would look at that. But from the Gandhian perspective, is there something different in terms of how you would look at such a situation? Is it anything different, or this is just exactly what you would do in any concept? Yeah, Mansi.
For Gandhi, truth was not, a static concept. He always believed that truth will change as per the circumstances of the times which we are living in. So morality again is different for different times, and as a mediator, for one, we cannot be conflict creators, we have to be peace builders. So one, we being multi-partial, we have to honor, we have to respect the settlement which has been reached by the parties. And also, as mediators, we have to accept that this is one form of truth which exists in this world where we are coexisting with each other. See, Gandhi believed in anekantavad, which is a very principal philosophy of Jainism, in which truth is perceived differently by different people, and there can be different moral angles to it as well. What is 6 for you might be 9 for me. So something might appear immoral, or it might not suit my tastes or perception or feelings or attitudes, but even then it is truth. All these relative truths combine into an absolute truth. An absolute truth is a wide concept where every form of truth is accepted, is assimilated. So if I am a Gandhian mediator, whatever settlement has been reached, I will accept it as a relative truth of the parties, and I will try to accommodate it into what is reality and how things work practically. So truth is it is a very, very dynamic concept. It keeps on changing for Gandhi. Gandhi has, he had insisted that do not believe in the statement which I have given, in earlier times. Rather, if I have changed that statement in course of time, please believe the later statement, because that is how I have experienced truth. So if there is something which I encounter as a mediator which does not appeal to my morality, I will not question the morality of the parties, but instead try to understand why it does not fit into my morality, and why my perception of the world is so, constricted, why it is not broad, and why I cannot accept something as a form of truth which exists in this world.
Perfect. Now the situation is that Henry now has about 4 minutes before us. So what
Mansi have to jump off soon, so Mansi then will be holding the fort.
No, what we are doing is, we'll at this point, Mansi will give a concluding remarks, and you will give your concluding remarks, and this is part 1. there is going to be a part two, because this is can't happen, because now we'll have to start looking at the practical parts, because of course a lot of it is theory and the practical part. So she'll start bringing in people on their practical part of it as we go along. So it's not the end. This is not the end, Mansi. This is just the beginning of the discussion. So you want to, as just a concluding remarks, if you just want to, based on what we've discussed, you just want to, and then we'll continue from there.
So the entire discussion brings me down to the idea of non-violent communication. Since, Henry sir has also emphasized that it is about from where the suggestion is coming from. I would like to add that it is how the suggestion is coming. It should be in the form of a request instead of a demand. And this is what non-violent communication is all about. The Gandhi's way of communication was such that it appealed to the heart of the masses. And that is why his authority was not just it came from heart. It was more in love of Gandhi that people accepted what his suggestion was, and not out of coercion or force or anything else. So it was the entire key to influence people or to transform them or to bring about a settlement is the art of non-violent communication, which Gandhi emphasized upon. And it is through requests that he appealed to the hearts of the people, that he appealed for transformation and not through demands. And that is why we cannot say that he was the one who imposed any kind of decision on them. The decisions which we want to follow out of our the what comes as an instinct to us, what comes as a force of love, is not something which has been imposed on us. So Gandhi, the key to the Gandhian model of mediation is his art of non-violent communication, which he has practiced and emphasized throughout his lifetime.
Perfect. Henry, would you want to give your?
Sure. So a few things here, Vikram. So I would like to say this. First of all, Gandhian model is not against any model of mediation. I would say it is inclusive of all of mediation, with an important addition, that whatever model, whatever techniques we use, the key distinction is where is it coming from? And here we suggest that we as mediators have to commit to the personal practice of ahimsa. So then that becomes how we are, that becomes how we show up. So ultimately, the overarching kind of global principles of the Gandhian model would be tuning inward. So the process of mediation then becomes also a way to tune inward for the parties, to discover what is important for them, what are their needs, how to really better understand themselves. Next, it's observation without evaluation. So this is fundamentally creating a culture of mediation that is already present to many, of deep and active listening. And again, that's mediator is deeply listening to her, himself, and outer listening. We then go to expansion. What are we expanding from? And that's expansion from positions to interests, to and through emotions, to and through values, and to and through needs. And I think it's important that we explore all of these. And finally, it's exploration. And that is the presence of curiosity, the courage to be curious in conflict. And these are the overarching principles. Now, application of these overarching principles can take many different forms, can take many different methods. This is not an exclusive method, rather it is an inclusive approach. And then to speak to something we talked about earlier, it can also result in a variety of different results. Sometimes the result may be settlement. Sometimes the result may be the parties throw their hands up in the air and say, I can't talk to him. And that's still an acceptable result. The result is not so much a focus as is the focus on these overarching principles, the principles of tuning inward, the principles and practice of observation without evaluation, expansion, and exploration. So then that creates an opportunity for the transformation, where even the most difficult interactions, even the most difficult, challenging conflicts become opportunities, opportunities for growth, opportunities for connection, and opportunities for continued dialogue.
I think what Henry, what I've tried to do, and Mansi, that I'm trying to keep away from the terminology model, for which I told Vedabhyas earlier. We were going to say Gandhian model. I said let's not, because this whole model thing kind of becomes a little constricting according to me. So I'm still trying to. That's why I said Mahatma Gandhi and mediation. So how you want to put it across as Mahatma Gandhi's methods or principles or whatever, we'll see how we have to word it. So we'll have to have a discussion on that. But we continue this. And Professor Jain will also then maybe join us next time. So we'll have a more wider discussion. So thank you, both of you. Thank you very much for coming in.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Wonderful
Thank you, sir.
discussion.
Thank you for having this.
And we'll take it
Yes.
Thank you, sir.
forward. So thanks a lot.
Thank you. Thank you all.